Welcome to another round of salty takeaways and bitter ends. And yes, we know that you probably have both of those if you are listening here on the network after the 1-0 loss for Atlanta United in Harrison, New Jersey against NYCFC. And Jarrett, it just seemed like it was a night where Atlanta United really didn't have any answers for the first 20 or 25 minutes of each half, and they grew into the halves, but then they couldn't get anything in the back of the net.
Yeah, it seemed like in the first half it was a situation of, hey, New York's going to press you and they're going to do it well. Well, damn, what do we do? I don't know, weather it for a bit. They're going to make it hard for you to play out of. But then they can't do it for the entire game. So when they have that let up, Atlanta gets a little bit of possession there and gets a little bit of opportunity, and you think maybe they can hit something on the counter. It just never happens. New York kind of collects themselves after that, and second half happens. Oh boy.
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a little bit. Let's take it 45 minutes at a time. 5 changes for NYCFC, including a couple of youngins under the age of 20 and some first-time MLS starts. And I think that Atlanta United fans, when they looked at that lineup, they sat there and saw some MLS youth on the ends at the back, plus some other added folks. And the chances, perhaps, if you could get free into space, that you could run at those ends, which seemed like it would play into the hands for Atlanta United, but it didn't. You had the first big save for Brad Gazan off of Medina in the 5th minute. So it was all hands on deck early where you had to pay attention.
It was, and it was really interesting seeing a lot of the young guys. Gray gets the start for New York City. I thought he was fantastic. Didn't look scared of the moment. Just kind of rolled into it and did his thing and was really good and played about, I think, 60 minutes. Was really impressed with him. George Bello tried to find space as the game went on, and we'll get into it in the second half with, Ezequiel Barco trying to find space on the left-hand side and running at people. But this is an interesting situation for New York City in terms of how well they're going to develop more guys, because we know they have Keaton Parks. We know they have James Sands, guys in the middle who do more of the dirty work. Having guys like Jason who started the game, and having guys like Gray who starts the game as a teenager, those are great for New York City going forward.
Then it's listening to the broadcast on the TV side. Kevin Egan said that the Atlanta United only had 4 touches in the offensive half in the first 10 minutes, indicative of what we've been talking about early on. And then Santi Sosa gets the yellow card in the 11th minute for his Majoras Patatas audition, I guess is probably the best way that you could phrase it.
Yeah, it was. I think they described it on the broadcast as, being like I think Moadu called like a frustrated tackle, trying to fire guys up. And that's what it seemed like. I mean, he came in, he got the ball and the man. I don't think it was like dirty or anything.
Right.
It was just a hard-nosed tackle. It was a stuck-in challenge. And he was about that life. We've known that about Santiago Sosa, and I think he was trying to fire guys up, because the bottom line for me was Atlanta United was just so flat.
Yeah.
They're flat-footed. And I wasn't expecting that after, you've had 2 draws that were really disappointing for this team. You're not having to play this on a U12 pitch up at Yankee Stadium. I think I was just expecting them to come out a bit more. Maybe they were all caught off guard by how effective New York was pressing them.
Yeah.
And New York was really good, not to take anything away at all from the Pigeons, but Atlanta United just couldn't seem to get out of first gear.
Didn't really happen, I think, until the 18th minute when they broke the press and you had Jake Mulroney looking for Eric Lopez. It turned into a one-hopper for Sean Johnson. But there was that stretch from, let's say, 18 to 31 where you had Atlanta United on the front foot. They seemed like they had some answers. Barco and Ibarra combined in the 20th. It was an easy grab for Sean Johnson. Moreno and Mulroney combined in the 25th, and then they did it again, and it was off of a Sosa tackle in the 26th. Bello had a chance a little later on. Bello and Lopez combined for another save for Sean Johnson, and then Jake Mulroney had that shot on where he tried to go inside with the left. So from 18 to 30, Atlanta United in the first half, they looked like they had things figured out.
Yeah, it seemed like they were going to create enough opportunities that something could happen. You're still missing, and the thing is, you're still missing that guy who's going to be the finisher, and you've hoped that Lopez would step up and be that guy tonight. You still don't have Joseph. Kubo Torres is so good at getting into space and so good at making unselfish runs and making selfish runs and finding the space, but he has zero confidence in front of goal right now, almost like comically zero confidence. We haven't really seen much of Jackson Conway. I thought this would have been an interesting game to start Jackson Conway, and then if things are going your way or not, you bring on Kubo later. But instead, you go with Lopez up top. You put Mulroney out wide, which – look, I mean, Mulroney can give you a lot. I like him at this point more off the bench personally.
Yeah.
But I think I get what you're trying to do when you start him. And then you have Jurgen Damm off the bench if you want basically another speed boost. Jurgen Damm's just kind of a wild card. And if that wild card comes up as a draw 4, I mean, only so much you can get out of that.
Yeah, or a skip. And it looked like, and you could tell that, and we'll get into that in the second half, that it was the first time back for Mo Adams and Jurgen Damm, and it definitely showed, because as we talk about with a lot of other players, there's a difference between match fit and match sharp, two entirely different things. Wrapping up the first half, Jake missed an opportunity where Ibarra and Lennon combined in the 35th. Then there was the no call with Keaton Parks with walks. Ibarra with a foul, and then Barco got the yellow in the 45th, and he took a bit of an issue with Ismail Elfath because he said that was his first foul, and that was the point that he was trying to make. And it looked like Ismail Elfath was going to let the game breathe a little bit tonight when it came to Atlanta United and NYCFC.
Yeah, it seemed like it. Kind of quick trigger on a couple of them, but for the most part, just kind of let things breathe. Went to the monitor for the foul that was reviewed later in the game on Lopez for a possible red card. For me, it still wasn't a red card. Like, right. Lopez is reaching for the ball. He's going to get there first. And I can't remember who it was for New York. The guy might have been Jason.
It was Jason. You're right. It was.
That Jason gets there late, and Lopez is reaching for it. Jason's not even there. He's reaching out for the ball, and then Jason's foot just kind of, apparates underneath Lopez's foot.
Yeah.
Like, Lopez is already in the motion of that stretch and that step, so I think it would have been a little bit harsh to give him a red there. But I also understood getting him out of the game because at that point he's probably on an orange.
Yeah.
But otherwise, persistent infringement we can always argue about because, it feels like it never really happens.
Right.
But for the most part, it wasn't terrible. Thought the big calls were right. And we'll get into the goal being one of them that I thought they did a really good job on.
And the other moment that I know a lot of folks, at least who were looking at the game as neutrals, were looking at was the one 8 minutes earlier where Parks goes down, and a lot of folks might have thought that Miles going in was worthy of a penalty shout. But looking at it as it went to VAR, it looked like Keaton Parks actually stepped on Miles as he was going on his way down, and that was why there was no call, and it looked like it was the right call, at least for me.
It was, in my opinion, too, and I've seen that given as a dive before, and I'm really glad that Elfath didn't give a dive there because there's contact. Parks, I think Parks initiates that contact. If there's contact and he goes down, the way I view things and the way I want things to be called personally, if there's contact but it's minimal and a guy goes down, I'm waving him up and telling him to get on. That wasn't enough contact for you to go down. If he goes down with no contact, that's a simulation yellow. So I'm very glad he didn't throw a card or call a foul either way. Play it on, guys, because I thought he did that one really well.
And we'll get into individual stats as well, but big save for Brad in the 61st. At the time, it was his 6th on the night. You got Kubo Torres in for 30 minutes. He came in the 62nd, which is kind of what we were thinking was going to happen with Kubo Torres. He comes in and gives you all of the effort that he does, running all over the place for 20 or 30 minutes, however much you call on him. Then for Atlanta United, the Barco free kick created a save for Sean Johnson at 66. Then, as you talked about on your social media, Miles Robinson did something that you really can't do, and it turned into a goal going the other way.
Miles did two things you can't do. First off, Miles misplayed a pass really badly to Ibarra, I believe. And then on the counter, I am 90% sure that Miles is the reason that goal counts. That Miles was just kind of floating a bit and kept his man on side because Bella was beat.
Yeah.
But if Miles had actually held his line higher and not kind of just been floating off in the ether a bit, which is really easy to say sitting on the couch, so I will qualify him that. But he was kind of just floating off in the ether a bit there and kept the man on side. That proved to be the winning goal. So it was, it was a mistake, and then it got kind of compounded. So yeah, it can't happen. Like I mentioned it before that happened, that New York City's not going to be able to press you the entire game. They didn't press you the entire 45 in the first half. They probably weren't going to be able to press you the entire 45 in the second half. You just had to play clean and kind of weather them, because that seemed to be the kind of game Atlanta was playing, because they weren't generating a lot playing through the pressure. They weren't generating, a lot of really anything.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to do that, you need to weather this and be clean, and then you made a fatal mistake.
Yeah, and that made it 1-0. Lennon and Bello combined in the 75th for another opportunity. It was cycled again to Marcelino Moreno 5 minutes later, and Moreno lost the handle. You had a couple of substitutions in the 81st. We got to see our first action of Mo Adams and Jurgen Damm in a while for Ibarra and Jake. Barco and Bello, you saw a lot in the last 20 minutes of Ezequiel Barco trying to create for Atlanta United offensively. Barco and Bello in the 84th. And it was almost 2-0 on a very cheeky moment from Maxi Morales, too.
It was, and I was not a fan of the way that went down, because for me, the big issue there was, it's Goose coming out of his box or coming out of his spot, and just kind of gets caught. And I thought he could have gotten back, but he never does. Instead, he ends up, hands and knees kind of crawling a bit there in that awkward spot that kind of humanizes pro athletes, where they're kind of crawling around like, oh, I could do that too. That's something I would do in that situation. Because, he's just trying to clean it up, but I'm trying to, do what he can. But having talked to Goose before, he doesn't second guess himself, and that's what makes him, I think, really good in those moments a lot of times when he does get the ball and when he comes out and he makes a play. When he makes that decision, there isn't a second guess in his brain about it. And I think that, even if things don't go perfect for him, like when he gets a red card outside the box and Loa Lindsay, it's just part of the territory, because he's also going to make fantastic plays getting out on those. But there he kind of gets caught, and then the really nice chip to the back post. And have you talked to your kid? Well, I need to pick up some more goals so we can have the conversation of, have you talked to your kids about the Tata Castellanos Golden Boot campaign? Because he almost got to add one to it tonight, because it would have been Goose kind of getting stuck in no man's land aside. It was a really pretty opportunity. It would have been a hilarious goal.
Well, and to your point, and I'm, not necessarily going to talk about a man of the match and a losing effort, but it would be Brad, because I think that it would have been a lot worse on the scoreboard and on the score sheet had Brad not had the 6 saves that he had tonight. But we like to talk about it in other sports, having a short memory. And when you have a mistake that turns into something, a negative, and negative can be varying degrees, but the notion that you're not going to second guess yourself, you've done what you've done, you put it out of your head, then you just keep going and doing what you're doing from what you've learned. And I think that when, we talk about Santiago Sosa, Miles Robinson, Brad Gazan, the key is to have short-term memory when it comes to things that happen out there over a 90-minute span.
You have to. I mean, he has to have short-term memory. Miles does, because he makes a horrible pass. Doesn't get lined up on the back line. It's like, it's a bad mistake. It costs you the game, but you can't do anything about it now. You got to move on. And he's got that mental toughness to do that. I'm not concerned about Miles at all. He made a mistake. Better players have made mistakes, have made worse mistakes. So I think Miles will be just fine. In the grand scheme of things, it's just disappointing. But you got to just kind of put it out of your head. Brad probably will, I guess I'd like to say Brad will chuckle at the mistake that, him crawling around the ground, but maybe he wouldn't. But I thought it was funny. But it's not going to change the way he plays. It's not going to make him scared. He's going to put it out of his mind, and he's going to go play his game. and Miles is going to do the same thing. And next game out, you might see Miles just throw up a perfect game where he's just boxing people out, like Dennis Rodman in his prime, and cutting out passing lanes left and right. So yeah, it's you made a really bad mistake, but you can't let it define you.
First corner for Atlanta United didn't happen until the 88th minute. They had another one at 90+3. Jurgen Dahm connected on one of his centering passes at 90+1. Sean Johnson with the grab, and you end up with whistles from Ismail Elfath, and it's a 1-0 final. Let's take a look at some of the numbers. Possession, and once again, you look at possession numbers. Atlanta had 53-47, but remember, it's what you do with it, and considering that most of the possession for NYC seemed to be in the attacking half. You didn't have to have it for a whole lot to do a whole lot with it offensively. Shots, New York City 18-6, 7-3 shots on net, 6 blocks for NYC, only 1 for Atlanta. Total passes within 10% of each other. Passing accuracy basically dead even at 81% for each. 4-2 in corners, 17 crosses for Atlanta to 6 for NYC. NYC had all 3 offsides. Atlanta United won the duels at 50-47. They won the tackles at 12-5. Brad had 6 saves, 3 for Sean Johnson. 18 clearances for NYC, 5 for Atlanta United. Fouls dead even at 19 each. Atlanta had all 3 yellow cards in the match. And looking at your SofaScore ratings, everyone pretty much who started was anywhere from a 6.4 in the position players, from a 6.4 basically to a 7.1. Marcelino Moreno was your 6.4. 7.1s went to Mulraney, Ibarra, Anton Walks. Brad Gazan obviously had a 7.5. So that's just some of the numbers from the night. When you look at the numbers on the board, does anything jump out at you, Jarrett?
I mean, on the grand scheme of things, for me, a lot of it is just a matter of you just looked flat.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the last time. Like, there have been games where Atlanta United's lost on the road. I just don't remember them looking that flat. Looking like a tired team. And I know you played Sunday. You played an emotional game Sunday. I was just surprised. I mean, it just seemed like New York City decided they were going to throw a couple punches, and Atlanta was just kind of came out of their corner a little bit flat-footed in the early rounds and didn't really find their feet and couldn't find their rhythm. And credit to New York City for basically breaking up Atlanta's rhythm in such a way. And I know it's really easy to say, hey, other teams are going to look at what New York City did and they're going to emulate it, and that's going to be that. Well, it's one of those things. I think it's easy to say, this is how we defend Atlanta. This is how we handle them. It's another thing to go actually do it. Because if you get it wrong when you're pressing like that, then you get cut open. Somebody actually hits like a line skipping pass, and all of a sudden you end up with what you've seen in the past sometimes, which is Atlanta United running downhill like the Rohirrim down towards Helm's Deep.
All right, let's take a look at what some of the folks said on Twitter. And as a reminder, folks, as you listen to this show, if you have other thoughts from the time that your head hits the pillow before the time that we come back on in the morning for soccer down here at 9 a.m., feel free to post them in the timeline. Bartimus Prime is in, and Bart is asking, is Jackson Conway a real person? Feel like we've only seen him mirages and stories of him with Atlanta United.
He's a real person. We saw him for a couple minutes the other game. I do understand your sentiment, though. This is a game, I agree. This is a game I would have wanted to see him start. You went with Eric Lopez and said, I actually thought Kubo was the right move in that situation because of the defensive work and the having to come back that he was going to have to do. So I didn't mind Kubo.
Let him run like hell for 30 minutes.
Pretty much. And Kubo can make those unselfish runs and try and create gaps, maybe not for himself. As long as the ball doesn't fall to Kubo's feet, we're kind of fine. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen Jackson Conway in this game, and I'm really hoping you get him Sunday against Red Bulls, because you're still going to be without a Joseph Martinez. I think that would be an interesting game to start him in, and then have Kubo be, the guy who comes in and cleans it up, because you're looking for a rebound there. You're looking to pick up a win for the first time in a real long time. So we'll see what they do. The team can use 3 points in a bad way. And, however they can get it. So I didn't want to write them off tonight because I'm sure plenty of people would have been, still very doom and gloom about it. even if you had like stolen a draw in the 93rd minute, well, we just saw Atlanta be better than two teams and give stuff up at the end. So it would have been nice to be on the other side, side of that fence, I guess is all I'm feeling about. But it wasn't meant to be tonight because Atlanta wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Red Bulls, by the way, lost 3-2 in a shootout to New England. New England had a 3-1 lead. Red Bulls took one back late, but ended up losing 3-2 as they head to Atlanta and Mercedes-Benz this weekend. Also on the board, Austin, bring in DeBeef. This feels like a team who's not bought into the tactics and is not confident in their abilities. At what point can we expect this to turn around? I would disagree, Austin, wholeheartedly.
I mean, I don't know. I think they bought in.
Well, because I, if they haven't bought in, then I would think that you would be seeing more of a helter-skelter approach. It would be almost San Jose-like for a comparison for me, is that with man marking, it takes a boatload of discipline. You've had an incredibly solid back line this year. You've had the emergence of Anton Walks at the back line as Alan Franco has been injured. Your back four has been solid. Your net has been solid. And one of the things that I would bring to the fore is that Gabriel Heinze's teams normally, they're not going to light you up like a Bally's pinball machine. It's not going to be 3 and 4 goals a match. They're not going to give up a lot of goals. But going back, and this is me from research during the time that he was hired, I think his highest goals per game scored average was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.6. So, that's not the 3s and the 4s, but there's discipline there and taking advantage of the situations that are in front of you. It's not going to be this avalanche of goals that's going to happen every single time. There will be chances for that to happen, like we saw in the first half against Philly in CONCACAF Champions League, where if you had finished your chances, it would have been 3-0 after 45. But and we've seen flashes where Atlanta United have done things offensively this year. But just as a reminder, the Gabriel Heinze offenses on average, they haven't averaged 2 goals a game even.
Yeah, I mean it's not even just the averaging goals a game. You just want to see him create more of the game like this, where it's going to be tough. I mean, this is a challenge for them. This is a team who came in and said, "Hey, we're going to defend you in the way that we think we can counter you, and we're going to basically dare you to beat us as we basically play to your weakness." So they were unable to do so. That kind of sucks. But I don't think there's an issue of being bought in or not. You're just gonna have to see what you can do in terms of getting things turned around the next weekend. You just don't want to let things spiral, because. Yeah, it was a really disappointing draw on Sunday. That was such a gut punch, especially to lose on like a world-class goal like that. And then to have tonight's game, it just kind of just takes the wind out of your sails. You got to find the wind back in your sails. I don't know whose job it is to do that on this team in terms of who's going to be the one to stand up, clap their hands, and rile everybody up.
Let's take a peek and see what else is on folks' minds here. John Nason is in. He says, to my untrained eye, this has a lot of the traits how the players didn't know how to implement FDB's tactics. They just aren't getting it or aren't good enough to execute. Ditch the man marking, let Lennon and Bello play wide, and bring Joseph home quickly.
I mean, that's the thing about Heinze's system is Heinze is not really pragmatic like Tata was. Like Tata was willing to bend things. Yeah, Heinze's going to be like, hey, so what's what we're going to do? But what if we no, this is what we're going to do. Okay, but what if we more time? This is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. He's going to stick to his style. He's going to live and die by it. Not dissimilar from what you're going to get from Almeida out in San Jose. Now, Almeida doesn't have as much raw talent, and there is a certain that might be where you might want to look at a buy-in issue because oh man, San Jose, I love you, but we got to talk.
Yeah,
I think that I don't know if necessarily is a buy-in issue with them, but it does kind of it does need to get you do need to have some spice in your feet, and this should, for all intents and purposes, this should be the game to get you riled up. Because I understand a lot of this roster has turned over, but the ones there should be able to explain to anyone who wasn't there before what an Atlanta Red Bulls match is about.
Yeah.
There are going to be cards. There's probably going to be a couple golazos.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be fights. Someone's probably going to get shoved to the ground. I can't promise you that Jeff Lorenowitz is going to choke slam somebody this time, but I also can't rule it out.
Well, I mean, he will be in the broadcast booth, so it might be our man Kevin Egan.
He might come out of the booth. Who knows? Plenty of people have gotten off the broadcast table and then put somebody through the Spanish announcers table on the ringside. We've seen that before. This should be the game that you get up for. If you can't get up for this game, I will absolutely understand anyone throwing up a red flag, though.
And for me, as I look at this, this you have folks who are still. This is the quarter pole, and I mean you're still. And I know that the results have been more draws, and this is the first loss that you've had in quite some time. But for me, I look at this as, all right, you're getting closer to the quarter pole, or you're at the quarter pole. I think that once everyone is back from international duty, meaning Joseph and Ronald Hernandez to a certain extent also, I think that having all the pieces healthy will be a part and parcel to this as well. Having Barco healthy, having Dom healthy. There's health that's in play here. There's learning the system that's in play here. Yes, I know that there are a lot of the intangibles that are attached to this that I'm looking at, a lot of external factors. And I know that, yes, at the end of the day, it's the 90 minutes and getting results that are there. But I think that leading into this, once you get through this double international window, and I know that we're going to have the same thing coming in Gold Cup, I think that once everyone's healthy and you can get some rhythm under you when it comes to how the system should be implemented, I think that the expectation should be that the results are better.
It should be. You do want to get that rhythm. That'd be great, because this is a team that's played better with the rhythm going back to 2017. The more games they get in a row, it doesn't have to be a suicidal run of like 3 games a week for 4 weeks in a row again. God, please, let's never do that again.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it's playing like once a week, hey, we got a midweek game every other week, that sort of thing. Finding that rhythm, I think they will play better with it. Now, the question is, how does the offense progress? Because I like what you saw out of guys like Barco in the second half tonight, where I want to see more of that from Barco, where he just kind of basically just picks up the spear and starts running into battle. Pick up that ball, charge in, driving at guys, earning a free kick, trying to create something. And he's done that before, and I liked seeing more of it tonight, and I hope he keeps doing it. Be that guy who's going to instigate things in the offense if things get kind of stagnant a bit. You're going to have to find ways to generate offense, because here's the thing, like, it'd be great. It's going to be great when Joseph Martinez comes back. There's no guarantee he's going to be the Joseph of old yet. He still needs to get games under his belt, and ACL. You're coming back from an ACL. It's great that he's on the field and playing, plenty of minutes when he's been out there. But there's no guarantee he comes back, and even from international break, and he's 100% and everything's all hunky dory. It still could take some time. So you're going to need other guys to still step up. That doesn't stop when Joseph comes back.
Also on the board, it is Nick Lamphere. In my opinion, since Tata has left, our talent continues to spiral downward, especially in the attack and midfield. We've had 2 managers with most of these players, and they both have gotten limited production out of the player pool. At what point do Boca and Eels feel the heat?
Okay, so this isn't I'm not going to attack you personally on this, but it's also like, I feel like every time this team kind of takes a downturn, this is where the first thing we go to, but then it goes away when the team plays well. That's me reading the situation. I'm also very petty right now and salty, which is why we're doing this.
Yes.
I don't know, at what point you start doing those sorts of things, because you have brought in guys who have actually produced. I mean, I know Emerson Hyndman was a whipping boy for a while. Then Emerson Hyndman goes down with an ACL, and nobody is sure how you can live without him. Brooks Lennon was a really damn good move. Cubo Torres wasn't a terrible move. He's also shouldn't be in the spotlight that he's in right now, but that's also because COVID kind of threw the entire, universe for a loop, and you're having to deal with tournaments getting moved around, this, that, and the other. Jake Mulroney's a good bench piece. You've brought in guys who can be good. And I think you can look at guys like a Marcelino Moreno and Ezequiel Barco and expect more of them. That's fine. Also think they've been fine. Like, especially, with the biggest issue for Barco is staying on the field.
Yes.
That's my biggest issue with him pretty much all the time, is that when Barco's on the field and able to play consistently, I like what he gives you, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field consistently and play for you, either through picking up nagging, soft tissue injuries or getting, obliterated into all of God's creation.
Yes.
But so I don't know. I mean, I feel like anytime we see this team have a bad performance, we fire up the front office change machine. But I don't have an answer for you on that front, though, because I can't make those decisions for you. I can't tell you who's doing what on that decision front. Who knows, man?
Well, but and also remember that production can come in different forms. Where, yes, you might not be scoring a goal, 2 or 3 in a match, but in Frank DeBoer's case, he won 2 trophies with everything that was going on before everything happened.
Frank DeBoer was a closeout on Nick DeLeon, possibly away from, and a Joseph Martinez penalty save away from hosting MLS Cup in his first year, in a year of turmoil. And you know what? Like, DeBoer was gone in 2020 because everything went to hell in Orlando. And I don't necessarily think it was the bad move. It was the right time to make that move. I'd have been really interested to see what the rest of 2020 would have looked like had you not had everything shut down, because you started the year 2-0. But fair play to Frank DeBoer. I think, and this is my take on him, I think he needs to stay in the Netherlands. Even if he doesn't coach the Dutch national team beyond one cycle, I hope he stays there, because I think in the Netherlands, he is just hardwired to be a coach there and to be a good one. I mean, he did great work at Ajax.
Yeah.
Even if you think the academy outperformed him and they won in spite of him, he still won, more consecutive titles than anyone else has won there. And I think he's a good coach for the Netherlands. I hope he stays there and he stays happy and successful. As far as what you've got in Atlanta right now, like, you're going to have to work through these growing pains. And it might be kind of a situation where you have more of these in year one, and they suck.
Yeah.
Games like tonight suck. There's nothing fun about them.
No.
You also have a summer window coming up, and you might see guys move in and out. Who knows? So, not the end of the world.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I think that when you look at the implementation of what Gabriel Heinze wants to do, what we've constantly said and will continue to say is that this year is the year where things may start out one way, but I think that as you look at the squad getting later and later in the year, the anticipation from both sides, those who cover and those who watch and those who are active in it, that the team will continue to improve as the season goes along. That as they get acquainted with each other, understand the system more, it becomes more ingrained, where there's less thought and more just action when it comes to having everything just kind of flow out of you and be there in a game state, where you get into the playoffs, then you make your noise. As you improve, the season goes along, then you see what happens in the postseason. The second year, much like it was under Tata Martino, as you've grown into what you're seeing, the second year should be where the expectations are chasing after a title. At least that's how I'm perceiving it.
I would also point out that I think Heinze is having to kind of rebuild this team mentally after last year, because, my God, it was such a hot mess at times. I think the mentality had to be rebuilt, and tonight kind of felt like the kind of not the technical performance side, but the flatness kind of reminded me of what we'd have seen sometimes last year, where I thought guys were just kind of checked out. But I mean, sometimes you're going to have those kind of step back before you can step forward kind of thing. So yeah, you want to rebound next week. You look at this and you file it away. You don't want to dwell on it, but you also don't want to forget it.
No.
I think you want to learn from it.
Yeah, it's not a take.
You have to. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, it's not a tape that you put in the file 13, but you sit there and you watch it and you take your notes and you make sure that it stays on the shelf. It's just not something that you want to watch continually. At least that's what I think.
No, yeah, I mean, there's not much else you can say about it other than the fact that it wasn't good enough against a New York City team that I'm still trying to figure out if they're really, really good or if they're just good.
Yeah. And
like I did this with New England as well.
Right.
And now New England's actually looking like a really good team. But at the time, they went through like 2 or 3 weeks where they were kind of like, will they, won't they?
Yep.
New York City's capable of doing that too. I've watched a lot of Rana Diala in my life, like an unhealthy amount. And yeah, you can get some runs out of him that are just absolutely terrifying, and then you can get some runs out of him
that are just absolutely terrifying
for the wrong reason.
Right. And that is something that we'll keep an eye on when it comes to NYCFC. Winners tonight, 1-0 over at Land United in Harrison, New Jersey at Red Bull Arena. And the Red Bulls, who lost to New England in Foxborough, will come to Mercedes-Benz this weekend. Sunday afternoon, a little after 3 o'clock, will be kick at Mercedes-Benz. For Jarrett, that'll do it for another round of Salty Takeaways and Bitter Ends. We'll see you in the morning on Soccer Down Here. And if there's anything else on your mind, feel free to put it in the timeline between now and then. We will talk about it at 9 o'clock and beyond on an Overreaction Thursday. He's Jarrett. I'm Jon. Play it safe, everybody. We'll see you next time.